Welcome to the Power 365 show. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/304. Before we chat with today's guest, here's a quick message from our sponsors. Right now, I'm actually looking for a new sponsor for this specific show. So if you know somebody that would be interested, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That would be fantastic. Without further ado, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Seattle, Washington. He's a principal program manager at Microsoft. He's a speaker and co-author of a book called Model 47, a startup story with Dona Sakar. You can find him on Twitter at Jeremiah Marble. Welcome to the show, Jeremiah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Good to have you on the show. In fact, it was Dona that recommended that I get you on as a guest. And I think it's been over a year since she actually came on the show.
It feels just like just yesterday. It's nothing like a global pandemic to bring us all closer, right?
Yeah, so true, so true. So how much are you working with Dona these days? Are you still pretty closely connected? I know, were you involved in her business as well?
So for the day job, I'm more of a fan. She's still an advocate for the Power Platform team, and I learned a lot about Power Platform from following her. And then we are co-founders of Prima Dona, her woman's line of clothes. We're close to launching a men's line as well called Towards Arcadia. So we're learning a lot about retailing an ethical business during a global pandemic. So all sorts of learnings going on there.
What was the name of the men's line?
So it's called Towards Arcadia.
Mm-hmm. What's the story there? There must be a story there.
Yeah, of course there is. So my family is French-Canadian by descent, and Arcadia was a region of Canada that was colonized by the French, and then the British basically kicked them out. And so the idea of Arcadia is, sort of many of Arcadians went to Louisiana, became Cajuns, and many of the food of that area is Cajun from Arcadia. So Towards Arcadia is it's towards the idea of a better place that we're all working toward.
Nice. I like it. And it wasn't until I was doing that background research that I realized that you were co-founders in that business. And of course, some of the garments that we see Dona modeling and or showcasing are quite fabulous.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, as you know, we wrote a book about entrepreneurship based on our experiences working with entrepreneurs in East Africa, so Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda, as well as Nigeria, so all over Nigeria. And then we were working on a third fellowship in South Africa when the global pandemic hit. So that's on pause. And we realized, as we were helping these entrepreneurs build social businesses and working with them on things like how do you do a P&L and how do you make a marketing plan and how do you identify who your customer is and build a better product. We realized that for me anyway, I've started a couple of startups, but it was a long time ago and they didn't do so well. And for her, it had been a while as well. So we realized just in this sort of experience of writing a book that it would be way more relatable, but also way more actionable if we had some skin in the game. And so we realized pretty quickly that this is an area, an industry where Dona has long had passion and a lot of expertise. She went to fashion school and she's been working as a software engineer for eons. And it was one of the things that, we kept meeting in our travels, really interesting tailors, seeing really beautiful fabric and, seeing some of the designs that Dona's being able to come up with as a product. It's very inspiring to see the, making the women the people who are wearing these garments, just how amazing they look, but we're also, all of the tailors themselves are in many cases supporting their own family. They're a single mother or they're supporting several children. And it's just really great to see how, one of the best ways of helping an entrepreneur is in many cases just giving them more business, right? And just celebrating the business already occurring. So we've learned a lot in launching the business, and we joke a lot that if we were to rewrite our book, I don't think that the strategy would change, but certainly some of the tactics. And we've definitely spent a lot of time doing things like how do you transfer money, to pay for fabric or to pay some of your channels across country lines. How do you handle shipping? How do you handle returns? How do you think about the actual nuts and bolts of getting to know your customers better? So some of the tactics would definitely be different if we were to write the book today.
Yeah. So I want to pick up on one of those, and that is, how do you handle transferring money? The banking systems have changed dramatically in the last 5 years. A lot of new startup providers, etc., that are agile, they're all app-based for moving money around. What are you finding in that space?
So from the point of view of someone who is trying to transfer money and not someone who's in the business of transferring money.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's what I'm looking for.
There is a lot of pain still in the industry. So, we work with people who are either suppliers or people who are buying. Like, we work with people all over the world, and literally, I'm not exaggerating. We've used probably maybe call it 12, anywhere from 10 to 12 different payment mechanisms. Everything from we work with an online bank. It's big in Silicon Valley, and so it's relatively easy to transfer money from one U.S. based bank account to another U.S. based bank account. But as soon as you try to transfer money to and from Nigeria or Rwanda or South Africa or Indonesia, name a country that's not the United States, even France or the UK. We have found so much pain just in finding first a way that is possible, and then a way that is easy, and then a way that is not going to really take a huge cut. The combination of these three things has left us with a very few number of mechanisms that we use. And so if I were to start, if I had infinite time and infinite resources, I think that those of you who are listening who have sort of experience in the finance industry or the remittances industry, there's a whole bunch of really good work that is still remaining to be done across bringing down some of those barriers.
Have you looked at Wise, or formerly TransferWise?
Yes. Yeah. So I have used it when it was TransferWise. TransferWise worked in a few places very well, but there are a few countries where it didn't work at all. And so,
Yeah. I've probably used TransferWise for 3 years now. I mean, all my income I make in US currency, so I'm paid out of the US. But I work across the EU, the UK, and I have people that I transfer money to in Canada and the Philippines and Australia and New Zealand. And I've just found, it's met definitely, but of course I haven't dealt with, some of those geographies that you were speaking about before. But I've found it, it meets the low, I'm not doing an ad for them here, but it meets the low threshold of how much they take, and then the simplicity of moving money I've just found. And I'm talking about, I've moved in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, using this technique, and it's worked really well.
I'll give them another look. I mean, we honestly, I'm a big fan of OneNote. I store much of my life, many of my books, many of my work projects, it all goes into OneNote, and then I use it to get around. So I have a OneNote tab that is especially around paying people. So it's sort of it's a table of the first column is the name of the person we're trying to transfer money to, and the columns are the payment instrument that we've tried, starting with bank account to bank account, and most of them are X'd out. We've tried it and it didn't work for that person, but the very next person we have to try that mechanism. So a lot of frustration, a lot of my time has gone into trying to transfer money. So it's sort of there's the sort of perception that everything in startup world is rosy and it's super easy, and you spend all your time hanging out with Mark Zuckerberg and trying to figure out which of the term sheets you're going to accept. And I've found that probably 80% of my time is in these very nuts and bolts elements of like, okay, what is the exact amount we want to transfer? What is the mechanism we're going to use to do it? Did they get it? And then once they, ideally send the garment over to you, then there's quality control. Like, there's a whole lot of things that go into a quality finished product that is part of why it's so difficult, and also part of why it's so fun. It's just like the amount of learning that you're forced to do is pretty incredible.
Awesome. So who's Jeremiah when you're not at work? What do you do? What's your family life, fun, food, all those type of things that you do when you're not working at Microsoft?
So I love the question. I mean, one of the things that is true is the answer has evolved. Like, is a very different answer I would have given you 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 15 years ago. So these days, we've got a 3-year-old daughter who is the love of my life, and it's just amazing to see how quickly she's learning. So I try to spend a lot of time with her outside and just sort of experiencing life. Whether it's going on the swings or going running around, or she's super fast on a scooter and on a bicycle, and just trying to be very active. We're very fortunate. I'm in the Seattle area, as you know, and we're very fortunate that we're pretty close to a whole bunch of mountains. So in her first few years, she's been able to walk and hike and go on my we have like a baby backpack, and so we're frequently outside there. And then I love Seattle as a place, and more as we're still on relative lockdown and not traveling. It's been great, to take advantage of all of the things, even socially distances, that you can do here in this area. And then, and to your question, there's a lot of my time that I devote to my day job, but between trying very slowly to write a novel about a place, the small town in Massachusetts where I grew up, trying to keep our business afloat, working on a few sort of side projects, trying to be a good father, trying to get enough sleep and get enough exercise. It is pretty incredible to look at the end of the week to look back and see, wow, I did a lot of things, and I could use a vacation from the from all of it. But yeah,
you definitely seem to pack a lot in, and even your time at Microsoft. What are the kind of key roles that you've had that have led you up to what you're doing now for Microsoft?
So I think I would trace it back even further. So I started my career back in New York City. As I mentioned, I started 3 startups in New York around the sort of first startup boom, and none of them really panned out, but I learned a lot. And then realized I needed to pay for college and got a job working in consulting for financial services. So sort of the big financial services companies, and was working for Morgan Stanley in Tower 2 of the World Trade Center on the 62nd floor on 9/11.
Wow.
So about 20 years ago, I was, going into work relatively late. I think it was around 8:30 in the morning. I was going into work. It was late for me because, I'd been working till midnight the previous night. And I saw the attacks. I wasn't inside the building, but it was a pretty, as you know, traumatic, devastating experience, and took a bit of time to sort of recover from being there. Once I took a step back, I realized that I wanted to offer a different set of things to the world than just burning a lot of money on Wall Street. And so I joined the Peace Corps, which is the American social organization part of the State Department, and worked for 2.5 years in the Dominican Republic in a small fishing village of 7,000. Started what's called a social enterprise there, which is a combination of NGO and a business. And then when I finished up the Peace Corps, I wasn't done with the social entrepreneurship kick. So I went to Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam to work for a social enterprise based there in Southeast Asia. And then, was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to study climate change in Costa Rica. And then moved to Paris, France to work at the United Nations at UNESCO for a while. So kind of from a background in computer science and startups and sort of techie, financy sort of thing in New York, I kind of took a hard right turn after a pretty traumatic day, and was able to have some pretty great, lucky experiences that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't have just been open to the thought. Before, coming back to the United States, getting an MBA and a Master of Arts in International Studies before joining Microsoft. So at Microsoft, I started out working in Windows Phone. I was a PM in Windows Phone from kind of the early days. It was it was kind of like when I was hired, my manager at the time told me it was like working for a startup within Microsoft. At the time, I thought it was kind of a hokey way of looking at it, that it's a big company, and how it really was like a startup. There were many things that we were figuring out as we were going, and I do think that coming into Microsoft, which has in many of its different business units an entirely different culture, an entire different way of doing things, and power structure and dynamics, and over and beyond the technology, which is fascinating. There are a bunch of different kind of mini Microsoft within this big organization. So I feel fortunate that I was exposed at least to that those early days, and a part of Microsoft that certainly was trying to figure out what I was doing. It hadn't really gotten the template down yet. So there's a lot of learning that had to occur very quickly, which I thought it would sort of set me up well to survive, if not thrive here. And then, as you know, Windows Phone and Windows kind of merged organizations. And so I sort of joined what we called Big Windows, and was instrumental in launching the Windows Insider program. So I was in the early days working with Gabe All, and then that's where I met Dona Sakar. Trying to build the world's best operating system for everyone on the planet, not just bankers in New York. And so that's where a lot of the work in Africa and in emerging markets came about. It was because in many ways, the way that a stockbroker on Wall Street is using Windows is very different from an entrepreneur in northern Nigeria. And so trying to figure out ways to improve the user experience for, that social entrepreneur in northern Nigeria ends up helping out everyone in the world. And so things like, accessibility features like narrator, for example, there are times when all of us have our hands full and could use someone to sort of tell us what the command prompt is, or improving the download size. It turns out that when you're in a place where there are many rolling blackouts and there's no electricity, it turns out that the battery life really matters. Well, battery life matters for everyone, right? If you're on a bus, or if you're on a plane, or if you're away from electricity, or the power goes out, or if there's a storm, everyone in the world can benefit from a few extra hours of their laptop before it goes out. Or, in many parts of the world, internet is not free, right? And it's spotty and intermittent, and it's hard to come by. And in some cases, very expensive. So some of the work we did reduced the download size for Windows, right? So it was really interesting to see how some of these things, which were for me very personal passion projects of learning a lot about the world and trying to understand, people who live in very different environments from me, some of these sort of things that are personally very important to me. It was great to have the chance to see how that can directly benefit people all over the world through the technology that we're building.
Well,
sort of the Windows Insider program. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that just blew my mind, everything that you covered, because what it's done is unleashed a whole range of other questions. One, starting at what you led with, I didn't realize we're almost 20 years on since 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And man, you must, I know exactly the moment I found out about that in New Zealand, where I was, that memory is etched. So it must be even more so for you from a tangibility of that experience at that time. And then, Costa Rica, no, it wasn't Costa Rica, a Dominican Republic. A question that pops into my mind there, did you sample any of the cigars?
I don't know if this is a children's show, but yeah, Costa Rica, both Costa Rica and Dominican Republic are known for the quality of their. So the answer is yes. I did in fact sample the cigars.
The Macanudo cigar comes from Dominican Republic, and I tell you, top notch. Probably what I learned to smoke cigars on was Dominican Republic cigars, not Cubans. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I don't know how far we want to go down that road, but yeah, I definitely, there's a place in the sort of north center of the DR called Santiago de los Caballeros, which is sort of a mountainous area, and it's sort of known for having high quality cigars. Another thing which is sort of DR is or should be world known for is its rum. The rum is pretty good there.
Nice.
The other set of things that, we're kind of DR is less known for, but I found it to be pretty inspiring, is there's a lot of really interesting work in solar energy occurring there. It's a place where, for many reasons, societal and otherwise, there are many rolling blackouts there too.
Yeah.
And so looking for ways through alternative energy sources like solar, like wind turbines, biogas, there's a lot of, for necessity, there's a lot of attempts to sort of mitigate the dependence on the electrical grid. So I learned a lot about that sort of.
Wow. Intriguing. Just to fast forward, UNESCO, once again, just an interesting organization. How was that time there?
So it was fascinating. I mean, I showed up. So UNESCO is based in Paris. It's right near the École Militaire and right near the Eiffel Tower. And it is a fascinating part of the United Nations, right? I learned a lot. What I was doing there was I was leading a software team that was trying to develop software for non-formal educational systems. So sort of an NFS, non-formal education, is such an education that occurs either outside of the school yard itself or not or after school hours. So you can imagine a group of students gathered around a tree or taking advantage of a non-school entity. So in many cases, the Minister of Education, which is trying to fund these non-formal education attempts, it's not very easy to compare them side by side and see whether the investment you're making at a high level or at a granular level is successful. And so first, in order to be successful in my day job, I needed to learn a lot about non-formal education and then a lot about statistics, because we had to work with ministries of statistics and education to sort of like figure out what are the types of questions that they would want to answer and what data would they need in order to be able to give that answer. So I had to learn a lot about the problem domain, and then it was also it was fascinating. At the time, it was frustrating, but it is, I think, kind of important to think about the importance of these structures that human beings make. Like UNESCO essentially came about so that countries that on paper are either at war with each other or hostile towards each other, the idea is you can bring them together and talk about important cultural things like education or sculptures or food, right? You can talk about these things that is sort of like part of being a human being, and if you do it right, you can avoid some of the touchy or feely things that countries often will want to go to war over, right? So it creates in this unifying body, it creates this opportunity for people who might disagree on some things to come together in other things. So on the one hand, it was very interesting to see that these structures are set up for a reason, but then working within those structures, it's a very slow moving. It's difficult to implement change because these processes have been around for decades, and in many cases, no one really wants to. It's kind of working well enough, so why would you mess with it? So it was kind of interesting to learn about for some industries and in some situations, moving fast and breaking things isn't really a good option. Like if you're moving fast and breaking things, but you're talking about a disputed border between two countries that both of which are nuclear armed, right? You don't really want to. So I learned a lot while there as well.
Wow, so interesting. I'm going to jump on to talking about what you do now, but just before I go there, I know that you were involved in Airband, the broadband initiative that Microsoft have done a lot of R&D on, and really about getting broadband out to the edges of the world, the places that are not served via fiber optic, for example. Can you tell us a bit about your time there, your experience, and that team, and the discoveries you made?
Yeah, so it was fascinating. I mean, so there is the technology, which is TV white space. That's sort of leveraging some of the unused radio spectrum to deliver internet signal. And so that was pretty cool from a technology point of view to see how something that started out life in Microsoft research is being applied in the real world to help real people with real problems. So as a techie, you would love it as well. I know that this is a personal passion for yours. So the technology is really cool, and just the stuff that you can do with internet is, especially top of mind these days in a global pandemic. But even things, being able to use internet is useful for healthcare and making sure, where are vaccines and how effective are they, and who has gotten a vaccine, and are you eligible? So healthcare, agriculture. So over and beyond sort of, is it going to rain next week? Things like, okay, in this huge field that I have, where exactly should I be using fertilizer? What kind of fertilizer? How much should I apply? Where should I not use fertilizer? Fertilizer is very expensive, and about half of it is wasted. connected. So across a range of fields, forest fires, like where is the forest fire? Where should I drop water? Where should I, send a team to respond to it? To say nothing of education or politics, making sure that folks have a chance to vote. So from a technology point of view, the work in Airbrand is fascinating. From an impact point of view, I kind of call it at the time sort of like a combination of the Peace Corps with Microsoft. So it's, you get to see in a dramatic sense the impact of going from no internet to having internet, just the set of things you can do. Once you have electricity and internet in a device that takes advantage of those two things, it's incredible to see the set of things that come out of it.
Yeah.
And I also learned a lot about just sort of the interrelationship between not just the technology that we Microsoft are making, but also the uses of the technology, and trying to figure out what is the right technology for a given person, for a given problem, and for a given solution. It isn't always throw 5G in like the most expensive laptop and in a data center at it. That's not always. Sometimes, of course, we want you to do that, but in many cases, you can get a long way with like a Raspberry Pi and just an internet signal that's sporadic. So it was kind of fascinating to see how in many cases it wasn't the shiniest technology that was the one that's going to crack the problem.
Yeah. What do you think the impact the Starlink is now going to have in this space, particularly serving the edges of society?
Yeah, I think we kind of called it sort of tools in the toolbox. I don't think that there's one correct technology that's gonna connect the world. I do think it's the combination of many of them. So whether it's low Earth orbit or medium Earth orbit or something that's terrestrial based or leveraging existing technologies but expanding the reach of them. There's a lot of interesting things that I saw around. There are parts in the Midwest of the United States that have grain silos and tall buildings and putting radio antennas on top of those. So I applaud and am sort of as a techie excited by the proliferation of these new technologies, but I'm also very keeping an eye on, okay, how much is it going to cost the end user? What new use cases is it gonna open up? Mm-hmm. And how hard is it to maintain? And kind of what is the planned obsolescence? Like, what are you going to do with the satellites as they go? Like, I found out, I kind of came to realize during my time there, it's a very tough challenge first to get internet to more places. And then once you have internet, kind of like it's amazing to see what will happen there. But if you look at it only from a technology lens of, okay, how am I going to apply this technology to that problem versus, okay, let's work backwards from the problem and figure out what's the minimum viable solution. It's kind of an interesting way of thinking about it. And so I'm very fortunate to have had the chance to work on that team.
Amazing. So your role now in Microsoft, what are you focusing on?
So these days, I am focusing on learning and helping roll out sort of all things sort of biz apps, right? So everything from Power Apps to Power BI to Dynamics through the marketplace of AppSource. So appsource.microsoft.com. And so as you well know, one of the ways for our partners in the biz apps ecosystems to get their solutions sort of matchmake with the customers who could use it is through AppSource. So partners would put their offers up on AppSource, and then customers can find those offers and avail themselves of them.
Yeah. So interesting, just before the show, I jumped onto AppSource and haven't been on for a while. Mm-hmm. And I've used it to list ISV products in the past. So I've been very focused, if you like, on the app side of things from a Power Apps perspective.
Yeah.
And I noticed that straight away the site looks way more appealing now than what it has in the past. And then there's the consulting consulting services. Are you more on the app side or the consulting services side of AppSource?
Yeah, it is interesting to look at the name AppSource. So the consulting services is a key part as well as apps. I am on the consulting services side of AppSource, and so I have a sort of a sister team that's doing a bunch of things on the app side, and I'm focusing mostly on consulting services for my day job.
Awesome. Okay, so how does a partner go about getting listed up there? I can see that they are kind of offering based. So, I'm particularly interested in the Australian market. And so if I was to select that as a location, then go down to, let's say, something traditional, let's say sales, I can see straight away there's 43 consulting services. So this is not 43 companies, because I can see multiple companies listed multiple times with their various service offerings. How are you seeing that this is a great way for partners to engage and I suppose really acquire new customers? What is from the trenches point of view? What are you kind of seeing happening from those partners that are getting listed up there for their consulting offerings?
So I look at it, and again, I'm relatively new to the team, so this is some of this is sort of my opinion and what I have noticed versus sort of like party line. I have noticed that increasingly offering offers through consulting service offers through AppSource is again part of a tool in the toolbox for our partners.
Exactly.
And increasingly from a Microsoft side, it is a way of sort of becoming a center of gravity for many of the ways in which we can help our partners, right? So there's nothing stopping a partner from coming up with offerings that they want the marketplace to know about, and then hiring a sales force to go look for leads and then qualify those leads and then implement the product. We encourage partners to continue doing that if it's working. But what AppSource gives both us, Microsoft, as well as our partners, as well as customers, is a single place to look for some of the offerings that are on offer, right? So it's a good place to find out, okay, who are in a given industry for a given product, who are the partners, especially the certified partners, who have competency in these areas. What sort of offerings do they have, and at a high level, what does kind of pricing look like, and how long does it kind of take? And so this is just like having an outbound sales force or a website or paid advertising on various social networks. Look at it as one of the ways. If you're a partner, look at it as one of the ways that your customers can find out about you and your offerings. And so it's certainly not, do this and nothing else, but it's certainly a tool in the toolbox. Is certainly how I look at it.
Yeah. Good. Any advice for people using the platform from a publishing perspective?
So you will start through Partner Center. So first, have an account on Partner Center. Second, we have tried to do a good job of making pretty explicit what are the eligibility requirements to be able to publish. If you have questions, I encourage y'all to contact us. We are making improvements as we go, and we're putting more effort into first the availability of more offers across more countries. So in the past, if you were a partner in the English speaking world, you had to create a separate offer for every country you wanted to do business in.
Correct. Yeah.
Now it's you can create a single offer and select several countries that are relevant. We just sort of request that you be willing to, if you select Belize, that you're willing to do business in Belize, right? So
one of the challenges with that, of course, is that you get somebody go up there and go, okay, I'm going to list in every English-speaking country, just from almost like a shotgun approach. Like we're just going to go broad and just let's see, But unfortunately, what it does then within those countries is that, for example, I saw in Australia a company there, a GSI that mentions that I know doesn't operate in Australia, but they've got a listing for the Australian market in Australian dollars. And I'm like, I know you don't actually do business. Like when I say I know, I've had on my podcast the founder and CEO of this company, and I spoke specifically to him about being in the Australian market or not, and he's not yet. There's a listing for their organization there around consulting services, and the risk is, yes, you make the platform look full, a lot of offerings, but then it's like too much information is bad as no information, right? Because now I've got to sort through what's legit and what's not. How are you going to doing anything around, like you're saying, if you're going to listen Billy's, do you have resources to deliver there? And of course, nowadays people go, yeah, the internet, we can deliver anywhere. But the fact is, you're probably not going to pick up a project in that location if you don't, you're not really invested in that geo.
Yeah, so that is you're a smart guy and you've been around for a long time. That is absolutely something that we're looking at and thinking about. What we in general try to follow is, assume best intent, but be prepared to handle what in many cases are exceptions, right? So if you go around assuming everyone's a bad person and you make your marketplace super restrictive, then it becomes frustrating on from everyone's point of view. The opposite, approach of letting a million flowers bloom, like you're right. There will be areas where you learn lessons the hard way. That's sort of one of the key learnings for me anyway from the Windows Insider program was if you come in thinking, hey, we're Microsoft, we know everything, we're going to do it this way, and if you don't like it, go away. That is demonstrably wrong. Like we as a company, there are exceptions, of course, but it does feel like we are trying as much as possible to offer choice, certainly to our customers and to our ecosystem. And we also recognize that I'm not sure when you spoke to the founder of GSI, or that particular company, single one, but we have found that our partners and our customers are facing, like all of us, a new reality, right? A reality where people have to work from home, they cannot travel, they are forced to work across time zones, they're forced to work, on poor internet and with poor childcare and with all the other things that are just true of every country in the world now, except for maybe where you are. And so, if for us to say thou shalt not doesn't really feel like the right approach. So what we're trying to do is instead, create the opportunities for partners to match with customers. And then in the places where we see that there is customer pain or that, someone is offering something that is clearly not real, then we'll take it down. We'll deal with that in that basis. Is at least how we kind of think about it. Yeah.
Partner Competency Index. That's another thing I know we've touched on before. PCI. I'd never heard of it until I did a chat with you some weeks ago. Tell me, what is it and what does that mean? What's the implementation? How that's coming about within Microsoft?
So it is a fascinating time to be in technology and also at Microsoft. So one of the things which is great is we have a pretty thriving ecosystem, and there are lots and lots and lots of partners in the ecosystem. And from the point of view of Microsoft, that's a great thing. We want a thriving ecosystem. But one thing that we have heard continually from customers is, to some extent, it's hard to distinguish between the many, many partners, right? So you're from a non-expert point of view, a lot of times what you're trying to do is decipher quality through a partner's name and, your own personal resources, maybe through LinkedIn, right? And so it's kind of hard to have a set of criteria that helps you, the customer, distinguish a great partner from a pretty good partner. And so what we are starting to do with PCI, the partner contribution indicators, is make available a kind of score that consolidates a bunch of information about some of our partners. And all of this is, publicly available. The way that we measure PCI right now is based on 7 key indicators. Some of those are around performance. So we have 2 indicators around performance, 3 that are around capabilities, and then 2 around customer success. And we're adding to these indicators as we need to be. But the overall intent is that PCI provides a pretty sophisticated view of what a partner can do, and one way of of sort of bubbling that up is that we are starting to combine the PCI score with the ability for a partner to gain silver or gold business applications competencies. So that's
right. So it's going to be tied into that.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Do you think that at some point, is it something that's going to be publicly displayed, your PCI number as an example, or do you think that's too, that's not part of your plan? In other words, how visible is it, one, going to be to potential customers as opposed to being more as an internal resource to Microsoft, so their sellers, tech specialists, etc., can get an understanding of the company that they're potentially going to recommend to a customer?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I don't actually know the answer to that. I know that we're trying to, again, leverage some of the lessons that we've learned the hard way. So whenever you roll out a new important score, right, there's always a set of things that you need to figure out along the way, right? Like what are the indicators that go into that score? How do you weight across those scores? How do you measure, right? So how do you handle for exceptions? Like what if if our system thinks that you have a certain number of functional consultants, but you tell us that you have a different number, right? How do you reconcile those things, right? What is the appeals process? So before making available this score, as if it were like an SAT score or a GPA, before making it widely available to everyone in the world, certainly we want to be pretty confident that we've nailed down, what are the indicators? How do we weight them? What goes into them? What is we want to make sure that we've got all these things on lockdown before it becomes, before it goes too broad, right?
Yeah, interesting. As in, do you think it's going to be a major influence, particularly in the space we're interested in, Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform?
So I think so. I mean, one of the sort of principles behind having PCI is that we, Microsoft, try as much as possible to take a carrot approach, right, to things. Mm-hmm. So by pointing the way towards the set of things that we want to encourage and shining a spotlight on those things, we kind of are encouraging those partners who want to take advantage of the things that come along with gold or silver competency. They start looking in that way. So I think that the trends that we have noticed so far have been hugely positive. Certainly our partners are much more aware of some of the things that we are incorporating in PCI. And my hope is that it continues on that positive path.
Now, I think I called it Partner Competency Index, but it's actually Partner Contribution Index. Is that right?
Yes, Partner Contribution Indicator.
Sorry, indicator, not index. So, man, I'm glad I clarified that, because I've seen the web page as a page on Docs there around contribution indicators. Brilliant. That's good to get that clarity. Listen, I can see our time is we're coming up to the top of the hour. I always like to finish off these with a few random questions, which I'll jump to in a moment. I've found it so interesting talking to you. You've had such a diverse career and, traveled the globe. So interesting. I bet you got many, many additional war stories to tell. Is there anybody else that you think would make a good guest for the show within Microsoft worth getting on?
So there's a ton. I mean, and I will admit I didn't look to see who you've already talked to, but you've talked to Charles Lametta and you've talked to somebody. Yeah. So have you talked to April Dunham?
No, she is formerly an MVP, but yeah, great call. I know April. I should get her on.
I believe that she would be a tremendous guest for you.
Awesome. Kind of what area, topic wise?
Well, she's sort of across the board a wonderful person. Just so some of the contributions that she made to our community are, I think, noteworthy. She's
fantastic.
Tremendously technical as well, and knows the product. So I think across the board, you have a good conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Okay, here's your random questions. What's the most embarrassing thing that happened to you during a date?
The most embarrassing, I knocked over the entire plate onto the floor. There was no second date.
I bet. When was the last time you cried and why?
Wow. Last time I cried is So my daughter is near and dear to my heart, and she waited to eat her food until I got home.
Wow.
And she was like, "Dad, I'm glad you're home. I'm really hungry."
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
That made me tear up, that she, because food is a very powerful force.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I've got a 5-month-old daughter myself. So, yes, the apple of my eye. Would you rather be proposed to in private or in front of family and friends?
In private, definitely.
Are you a cat or a dog person?
Kind of both. Yeah, I'm going to go I love animals. I love both cats and dogs. So I'm going to go with both.
Nice. What activity did you try as a kid, but you weren't that great at it?
Basketball.
Awesome. If you could switch places with one of your friends for a day, who would it be and why?
If I could switch places with
one of your friends.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know. I'm pretty happy with my life and my own challenges. And yeah, I think I don't know that I would switch. I think I would just sort of double down on my own life.
Well, this is the thing. I think a lot of your friends would probably want to switch places with you with the experiences that you've had. Pretty amazing.
There's a lot of war stories. I don't know that that's true.
Jeremiah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, aka the NZ365 guy. Please like and subscribe in your favorite podcast player. If you want to leave a review, I'd appreciate it. nz365guy.com/review. And if you want a specific guest on the show, let me know and I'll reach out to them and see if we can get them on. Otherwise, see you next time.